Hi, this is Dr. Patty Sadala. Today, I wanted to talk about faith forward or faith backwards, that you can actually influence by how you begin your thought process. You can actually increase your faith or you can move forward with moving backward. It's faith in reverse. And I want to show you in in a model that I've created called the senses of the heart and cycles of behavior. I'm going to show you how this naturally works in your life. And I remember talking to Ken Blanchard one day about whether a model needs to be scientifically tested to prove its validity. And he asked me if the model had aha validity. And I asked him what that meant. And he said, is it true in your natural experience? And I believe that when I share my stories of faith forward and faith in reverse, you'll have your own stories of faith forward and faith in reverse and realize that this is exactly the truth of how faith works to either grow or diminish in your life. And it all begins with what you fix your eyes on and what you fix your ears on. So let's look at this model, the senses of the heart and cycles of behavior model. You'll notice in this model that that the cycle is going in clockwise, but you'll also notice that the cycle has a positive and negative in every box, which means that you will go around the bend. You will go all the way around the bend, but your outcome can either be positive or negative. So let's look at this entire model for a second. The center circle is your heart, and your heart is the dwelling place. It's synonymous with your spirit. Your heart is the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit, and the spirit part of you connects with the Holy Spirit in the heart. And so when you see spiritual senses that we're talking about going around the bend, that is the spirit part of you connecting with the Holy Spirit in your heart. But you also have natural senses, your eyes and your ears and your, taste and your sense, and your feeling, all emotions. Those are all natural senses. You receive information at the top. It says you receive information from ears and eyes with your natural and your heart senses. Now, when you receive information, you have a choice. You're going to ponder in your mind as the next step, what meaning do I attach to this? What meaning do I attach to this? That's the answer the question that's answering there. And the third is, what decision do I make in my heart? What am I believing about it? So that moves you to the next stage, which is, how am I going to feel about that? The emotions of my heart. And the interesting thing about the emotions of your heart is they are the actual motivators for action. You behave because of your emotions. Moved by compassion, Jesus healed. It was when it hit his emotional state that he was motivated to move and change. And then after you make a decision to act, you wait for the results and we'll see what happens. Now let's take this first in a negative direction. And I'm going to share a story in my own life. I was a newlywed, probably only less than 6 months married. My husband was a windsurfer, and he left to windsurf that day earlier in the morning. And as the day went on, because I was used to him windsurfing, and he would always get home around before dinner time, anyhow. And as the day went on and he was not coming back, I allowed my mind to picture very scary outcomes, as you do, right? You just start to go, where is he? We didn't have cell phones back in the day. There wasn't an ability to just call or text and find out what's happening. And so I was getting more and more worried. And the more I started picturing in my mind negative outcomes, the more they started growing within me. And I started making calls to his family and other people, his friends. Have you seen him? What's going on? He didn't come back for dinner. And, and then you go through those stages where, first you're concerned and then you're angry and then you're really, really worried and concerned, right? And the assumptions start to roll in your mind. Well, it was 11 o'clock at night and I was watching the news on TV. He still wasn't home. And the news reported that a windsurfer died on the lake that day. And they were trying to find the body. And I absolutely lost it. I mean, I was just really, really upset by then. And I just didn't know what to do. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when my husband finally came home. And I was happy and angry and all kinds of stuff at the same time. But it was his friend that died on the lake that night. And even though he saw the news cameras, and back in the day, those news cameras were like giant, big things hanging over somebody's shoulder. He saw the newscasters there, and it didn't occur to him to call me and tell me it wasn't him. But he was concerned about his friend. He was wanting to find his friend. He was obviously grief stricken that his friend was lost, and it was hours and hours, and he hadn't showed up. And I had worried his entire family for hours. That's faith in reverse, because that is my eyes fixed on the natural world. My I pondered in my mind, what meaning was I going to attach? He's in danger. Something's wrong. This is not good. I decided with my heart to speak the negative expectation out of my mouth when I was calling his parents and taking action emotionally to just really freak out. And then the waiting makes it so much worse, doesn't it? The waiting actually is can make its cycle start all over again with even more anxiety and worry. So I want to tell you what it's like though, when, because we know how to fix our eyes on Jesus, tune to the flow of the Holy Spirit, hear and see God directly, how we can get a completely new perspective. We can get a new perspective. You receive a negative diagnosis, and I'll share this story because this is a true story too, where I did this faith forward instead of faith in reverse. So I was in my doctor's office, and he had given me a diagnosis. There was some abnormal bleeding, and he told me I was going to need a surgery. There was a test that said that I was going to need a surgery, and I answered him, "We'll see," because I had learned from the very beginning, when my first miraculous healing from the Lord from Lyme's disease. I learned my lesson that the great physician is always my first doctor. And sometimes my doctor agrees with my with the Lord, and sometimes he doesn't, but I always agree with the Lord. So I said, "We'll see." And he goes, "Now, Sadala, I'm going to absolutely need you to get this surgery because it's indicated and you're going to have," and I go, we'll see." So I walked out of that office and the bleeding stopped. And I journaled about it and I asked the Lord, and he goes, "Nah, you're fine. You don't need the surgery. You're fine. It's healed." My declaring that "we'll see" in that doctor's office was all that Jesus needed to heal me in that circumstance, because I literally walked out the door and I didn't need the surgery. So a few months later, I came back to the office and he goes, "Hey, I got a bone to pick with you, Sadali. You did not get that surgery now." And I said, "I didn't need it. The Lord healed me." And he said, "Well, now you're going to have to get an expensive a test out of the, insurance test to prove it, because I need to know as a doctor that you're okay." So fine. did the test, came back that I was fine. And he just, the next meeting, he said, "You baffle me, Sedalis. Sometimes you listen to me and sometimes you don't. Why is that?" And I said, to be all, with all due respect, I never listen to you. I always listen to the Lord. And sometimes he agrees with you. So I never had an ounce of worry about that. And my How to Live a Worry-Free Life book, I would encourage you to get, if you struggle with worry, I encourage you to get this book because it is the journey that I went on to learn how to live faith forward, to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus, agree only with him. And if he says that I need a surgery, I'll get the surgery. If he says I don't need it, I don't need it. And I just want you to realize that when you begin with God, you end up with God all the way around the bend. Now that being said, some people can start off good and feeling good and go all the way around, and the waiting is the challenge because in the waiting for the promise, they can begin to doubt. And my encouragement for you is to start around the bend again and still declare the promises of the Lord and still believe everything that God has said to you that he will do and that is true. And you will begin to live a life of naturally living faith forward. And the exciting thing about it is when you make that choice and you see God show up because he's a promise keeper, he's not going to let you down. When you see him show up, and fulfill the promise and do what he said he was going to do, next time it's easier for you to have faith forward, to begin with him, to ask him, what does this mean? You tell me what it means, Lord. What does this mean? What meaning do I attach to this? And how can I agree with you in my belief systems, in my actions, and in what I confess with my mouth? So that's my tip for today. Make sure you check out the other foundational lessons. Ask me questions about it inside the forums and check out How to Live a Worry-Free Life at my bookstore, pattysadal.com/store. Thanks.